All right. All right. Hopefully everybody's going to start coming back in. I apologize for that. We had some major problems, and apparently this stream got shut down. We couldn't see anything in the chat. We couldn't see any of y'all's comments in the chat. Something was screwing up. So when we attempted to fix it, the stream shut down completely. So we apologize for that. Apologize for the technical difficulties, but it looks like a lot of you guys are finding your way back to the live stream. So like I said, apologize for that, but we're back. We're ready to go. I'm seeing the comments now. Von Hook, good to have you. LSU Fan 101, Emperor of Rome, always good to have you as well. And I agree that Minnesota should be in the top 8. Now, that would be a pretty high jump for the committee, jumping from 17th to, even if it's 8th, that's a huge jump. It's 9 spots. But I think I think that they deserve that. I personally do believe. We're going to do the rest of the questions that we have. But Von Hook, LSU Fan, Emperor of Rome, Johnny Bays, good to have you. Good to see you. Not much going on here. We're ready to see these rankings, ready to discuss with you guys, and just ready for Saturday to come around. I tell you what, Saturday cannot get here fast enough. Adrian Cardwell, interested to see where the committee puts Minnesota. Should be ahead of Penn State. Dontron Plays. And Cyclone Mitch, good to see all of you. M31, good to see you as well. So the biggest things that I'm looking for in these rankings are, as many of you have already mentioned, where Minnesota is going to be ranked, where they're going to rank the Golden Gophers after their win over Penn State. I agree they need to be above Penn State. Minnesota undefeated, Penn State a one-loss team. So I think I'm very interested to see where they put them. Should be above the Nittany Lions if the committee still owns up to their head-to-head results. If they still put emphasis on head-to-head, which they should, Minnesota should be above them. And I agree with Emperor of Rome, should be in the top 8. I'm also curious to see where Alabama falls. Alabama was at 3 just last week. Are they going to drop to 4th? Are they going to drop to 5th? Or will the committee drop them lower? That's something that I'm really interested to see. Kirk Herbstreit said best just a few minutes ago how interesting it's going to be to see where the committee ranks pretty much 4th through 9th, or really even 4 through 10. I think your top 3 are locks. It's going to be LSU, Ohio State, Clemson. And then after that, the order of 4 through 10 is going to be very, very, very interesting. So I've got Georgia in at number 4, Alabama in at number 5, but I'm curious to see if the committee likes that. We've seen it before where teams like Alabama, or even a couple years ago, Michigan or Clemson, only dropping a few spots after a loss. And for Michigan and Clemson back in, what was that, 2016, 2017, that was not quality losses, in my opinion. So I'm very interested to see that. See who else we've got in here on the stream here. Charles Goodson, good to have you. Fear the Saints. Appalachian State, I have App State in my top 25. I have them coming in right at 25, and I think they deserve that. Trey Drew, what's going on, man? It has been a while. It's been quite a while, man. So I'm glad to have you back on the chat. Good to hear from you. Glad to see all 27 of you and counting right now. Clayton Holderfield, shout out to you. Good to have you, man. Hope everything's going well. Catch up with you tomorrow. Barson 188, Baylor, Minnesota on fire. Absolutely. Both of those squads undefeated. And I do want to see where the committee puts them. Minnesota obviously having, in my opinion, a better win on their resume than Baylor has all season long. Baylor's win over Oklahoma State was good. Baylor's win over Kansas State was good. But Minnesota defeating the 4th team in the country, that's better than what Baylor has. So I would put Minnesota ahead of Baylor. But don't count out the Bears, guys. They got Oklahoma this week. Game day's in town. Waco is going to be rocking. And I'm pumped for it. That's our game of the week. That analysis is coming out tomorrow. But I'm extremely, extremely excited for that game. And if they win that, you need to start taking them very seriously as playoff contenders. Because if they beat Oklahoma, I think Baylor beats Texas. And then I think they close. I don't know who they close up the year with. I can't recall. Kansas, maybe, if I'm not mistaken. And then Big 12 championship with a potential rematch against Oklahoma. Baylor, in my opinion, will not get in as a one-loss team. I think Baylor's got to win out. I think they got to go undefeated. But it'll be very telling when these rankings come out. I think last week they got disrespected coming in at 12. Let's see if they move up in this. Von Hook, I agree. Indiana should be in the top 25. I've got them at 24, sitting at 7-2. See if anybody else has joined the chat here. I saw one earlier. Where was he? I think Brandon was on here for a second. B123. I'm not going to share my kick on Oklahoma and Baylor yet, although that is on our expert picks if you want to go buy those. I'm giving you a couple of free spread picks this year already. Come on now. It's going to be a great game, though. Going to be a close game, in my opinion. I'm excited for it. Yeah, Varson, I tell you what, I never, ever thought that Baylor or Minnesota would have a season like this. I think a lot of people thought Minnesota was going to be a surprise pick in the West, the Big Ten West this year, have a good year with PJ Fleck, but I don't think anybody saw them sitting at 9-0 with a win over Penn State, knocking on the door of a Big Ten championship and a playoff picture, in the playoff picture, a playoff appearance. That's what I'm looking for. So I don't think I saw that. Baylor, same way. I thought Baylor was, I think their cap was 8-4, 9-3, and they have exceeded my expectations. And if they beat Oklahoma, I think Baylor finishes the regular season undefeated. I think if they beat Oklahoma this Saturday, Baylor finishes the season undefeated. And personally, I want to see that. We, guys, one of the beauty of this season is back before the season even started. It's the 150th season of college football. We said we want to see something different. We want to see – and not saying that anything against these great teams, Clemson, Ohio State, Alabama, but – let's find someone in there to kind of shake up the picture a little bit, because the past few years it's been very predictable. This year has finally been unpredictable. It's been one of the best seasons of college football I think we've had in a long time, because you've got teams like Minnesota, Baylor, Utah making runs in the top 10. You got a team like LSU that was able to go on the road and beat Alabama and is making a case for a playoffs picture and being in a national title picture after everything. So let's jump into it, guys. They're about to start breaking down these rankings. I'm sure my TV might be behind some of y'all's and vice versa. But coming in at 25, we have Appalachian State, which is exactly where we had them in our rankings that came out Monday. Kansas State, 24. Navy at 23. Oklahoma State, 22. And Boise State at 21. So once again, you see they've got two group of 5 schools within the top 25, or from 21 to 25. Kansas State at 24 surprised me, dropping 8 spots after their loss to Texas. Iowa coming in at number 20. Don't agree with the Hawkeyes actually even remaining in the top 25, but they do that because they're playing Minnesota this week. Texas coming in at 19. Memphis at 18. Cincinnati at 17. Notre Dame at 16. I fully disagree with that. And Cincinnati coming in at 17. And like I said, we're going to tell you how we did with these, how we matched up with our predictions and our rankings versus what the playoff committee put out, what we got correct, what we got wrong. George Stice, good to have you, man. I'm looking at the comments while I'm looking at the rankings. So glad to have you. Let's keep moving on. We've got Michigan coming in at 15, Wisconsin at 14, moving down a spot, Baylor down a spot, committee straight up disrespecting the Bears, and we will get on that in a second. But this is absolutely getting ridiculous, what they are doing to Baylor. Auburn in at 12, Florida in at 11, which is also where we had the Gators in our rankings, despite the Gators defeating Vanderbilt 56-0 this past Saturday. And I know it's just Vanderbilt, but still. I cannot believe the disrespect that Baylor is receiving right now, dropping a spot. I get that the win over TCU was triple overtime, maybe not as big as some would want it, but that is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Oklahoma coming in at number 10, dropping a spot after their narrow victory over Iowa State within 1 point. I had Oklahoma at number 12 because of that narrow victory over Iowa State where they led by 21. And they only won by 1 point and should have lost that game. Penn State coming in at 9, which means obviously Minnesota will be ahead of the Nittany Lions. We had Penn State at 10 in our rankings, dropping 5 spots for the committee from 4th to 5th. And I'm sure Minnesota, they're probably going to put it number 8 or number 7. Don't see them being any higher than that. Plan on them being 8th here, and that's exactly what they did. Minnesota at 8, while we have them. I'm sorry, we actually did have them at 8. That was my first draft. So we had Minnesota at 8, right where I expected them to be, moving up 9 spots. A huge jump, one of the biggest jumps we've seen from this college football playoff committee in their history. Seeing a team drop up 9. Utah coming in at 7. That's where we had them. Oregon, I would presume, coming in at 6. And then the top 5, of course, going to be very, very interesting. Mostly just because of what they do with Alabama. Although I would expect the Crimson Tide to drop to 5th. And they plug Georgia in at 4. Although I really feel those two are interchangeable as of right now. So before we get to the top 6, which we know who's going to be in it, it's going to be LSU, Ohio State, Clemson, Georgia, Alabama, Oregon. I am once again in complete shock of what I have seen with these rankings. And once again, I'm going to go through and kind of look at the ones that we agreed on with the committee. We weren't too far off on these lower rankings. Correctly put Cincinnati at 17, Memphis at 18, App State at 25, but in Florida at 11 right now. But what I'm seeing is the fact that we have Baylor right now sitting at number 13. And granted, I'm not a Baylor fan. That's a team I don't have allegiance to. But to lower them to 13, we'll get on that in a second. But George Stice, like I said, good to have you. Syracuse and Buffalo Sports, happy to have you as well. Glad to have you being this first live stream with us. So very pumped to have you guys. All 118 of you. This is by far the best live stream we've had with the amount of people on at the exact time. So thank you. Thank you very much for all of you joining us today, talking these rankings, talking these horrible, horrible rankings that the committee has decided to put out, thinking that they know a lick about college football. I get that the point of the college football playoff is to correctly get the top 4 teams. But you know what? I think that the committee sometimes focuses too much on the top 4 teams and doesn't take stock into 5 through 25. And that's the problem that we've had for the past 3 years since we started the Gridiron Expert. You can go back and watch our videos from years ago where you say, yeah, the top 4 is what people pay most attention to, but you cannot disregard 5 through 25. And we'll touch more on that in a second. Let's take a look at the top 6. LSU, now the number 1 team in the country, and rightfully so. Rightfully so. LSU claiming that number 1 spot, going on the road and beating Alabama, something that not many teams have been able to do. So LSU jumping Ohio State for that number 1 spot. You're going to have Ohio State coming in at number 2. And then you're going to more than likely have Clemson in at 3, I would presume. LSU and Ohio State, we had number 1, number 2. We agree, and I think we thought that LSU deserves to be the number 1 team in the country, just judging by the way they've played all season long. Clemson in at 3, no surprise there. You know, they were out. Some people will question that, why the Tigers are in there despite having not played anyone. The committee had them ranked at number 5 in the country. And when the number 3 and number 4 teams go down, with Alabama and Penn State last week, you're going to move up. You're going to move Clemson up, especially with that dominant road performance against North Carolina State. I get they're not elite, but that's the way it is. Georgia in at 4, as we predicted. So we correctly predicted and correctly ranked the top 4 that we released on Monday, which means Alabama should come in at 5. There's no way that I believe that Alabama will drop from 3rd to 6. You're going to put Bama at 5th and Oregon at 6, I would presume. So there you have it, guys. You've got your new top 25. Alabama is in fact at 5, which means Oregon's going to come in at number 6, which means we correctly predicted or correctly ranked the top 8 teams in the country, which is an extremely difficult thing to do. Because we said earlier, right at the beginning of the stream, that we thought the top 4 through 9 was going to be extremely difficult to rank. And if you're still watching, you can see Baylor, the lowest ranking by a 9-0 Power 5 team in the college football playoff era. They're coming in at number 13. No team stayed in the same rank as they did last week, and Minnesota was the largest jump into the top 10 in the college football playoff era, moving up 9 spots, and that's what we said earlier. So, ladies and gentlemen, once again, I want to reiterate, make sure to like this video. As Emperor Roma stated, that definitely boosts our analytics. All these views and comments boost our analytics as well and help us out. So thank you for that. Whew, wow. So, all right. Rankings are out. Let's talk. And I'm going to try to take as many questions through the chat. No call in today, unfortunately, but take as many questions as we can through the chat and discussion here as we can, getting y'all's takes on it as well as mine. But LSU all the way to Minnesota, no problems with it because that's exactly how we had it. It's after the Minnesota rank at number 8. That's where I have an issue. That's where I've got an issue is Baylor. God, Baylor. Putting them at number 13, no respect. And I don't know what it's going to take for Baylor to earn the respect from the committee. Like I said, I'm not a Baylor homer. Obviously, never have been, never will be. But the facts are out, and I said that Minnesota had a better win than Baylor. Out of all the Baylor wins, Minnesota already has a better one with that win over Penn State. In our rankings, I put Minnesota ahead of Baylor, and they did that year. But I'm looking at it now. And Baylor sitting at number 13, actually dropping 1 spot after their triple overtime victory over TCU. And Trey, I agree that if you beat Oklahoma, if Baylor beats Oklahoma, they'll be just fine. But to me, that shouldn't have to be the case. Now, winning should be the case, but they shouldn't be number 13 right now. It shouldn't be a thing from the committee. It's like, oh, we don't believe in Baylor yet, but let's keep ranking them lower and lower and lower. And then if they beat Oklahoma, that's when we'll start giving them respect. That's not the way it should be. Baylor playing at the caliber they're playing. I know they've had some close wins. I know that 4 of their 6 Big 12 conference victories have come by a combined 14 points. But let me tell you something here. Something that we addressed in our predictions that we put out today, and something that we will address in our game of the week between Oklahoma and Baylor. To me, Baylor seems to be playing to the level of competition. Now, that's not necessarily what elite teams do. But if you look, when Baylor has played weaker competition like West Virginia, Texas Tech, guys like that, and TCU even, who's not necessarily elite, those have been narrow games, close games for Baylor. When they've played better teams like Oklahoma State, who was ranked 22nd, or Kansas State, who was ranked 24th, both on the road for Baylor, the Bears showed out, and dominated those games, beating Kansas State by 19 and beating Oklahoma State by 18. So they seem to play to the level of their competition. I expect them to do that against Oklahoma on Saturday. But here's my thing. If Baylor wins, they will jump and crack the top 10, no doubt. If they lose, though, the way the committee's treating it, Baylor will probably jump from 13th to 22nd. They'll probably drop 9 spots, regardless of what the score is, if Baylor were to lose. And to me, that's extremely unacceptable. Not getting enough respect from Baylor whatsoever. Baylor truly just not getting any respect. And that was the issue that we had last week, and that was the issue that we once again have this week. So I do not know what the committee – and we're going to talk about other teams as well, but I don't know what the committee is looking for Baylor. I don't know what the committee is looking for from other teams, Florida, Auburn, Oklahoma. The fact that Iowa, to me, is still in the top 25, top 20 is shocking to me as well. So I'm going to take some questions real quick, and then we'll keep breaking down these top 25s. Forceful. You know, you're one of those people that I guess I could have Ohio State beating everybody by 50 points and winning the national championship, and you still wouldn't be happy. That's what something seems to me. Grayson B sums it up. They played, all caps, Maryland. Congratulations, you can score 73 points. Congratulations, you crushed Wisconsin. All quality wins. Ohio State deserves to be the number 2 team in the country, but not number 1. LSU defeating Auburn, who the committee believes to be the 12th best team in the country, beating Florida, who was the 11th best team in the country, and beating Alabama, who was the 5th best team in the country. To me, deserves to be the number one team in the country and not Ohio State. Ohio State, dominant. I think they're the most complete team in the country offensively and defensively, but they don't deserve to be number one right now. Baylor or LSU, still stuck on Baylor. LSU's performance on the road against Alabama deserves them to be number one. They deserve to jump Ohio State. You can comment on my videos, and I really appreciate that. I appreciate all your comments and the support. I don't understand how I don't put any respect on them when I continue to talk highly of the Buckeyes, continue to rank them highly, and continue to say that they're the most complete team in the country. Like I said, it's one of those fans that will never be satisfied with anything. All right, so let's go through the rest of these comments here. Try to take a look at a couple of them as much as we can. We don't mean to skip any, but of course we always do. Let's take a look. Emperor of Rome, so you're pleased with Bama at number 5, as am I. That's where I had Alabama in our rankings. And I think they deserve to be ranked number 5 right now. I didn't think they deserved, with it being a 5-point loss, I didn't think Alabama needed to jump from 3rd to 6th or lower than that. I think 5th is respectable, and moving Georgia into number 4. And many people will be quick to say that Georgia maybe shouldn't be in at number 4 because of the loss to South Carolina, who just lost to Appalachian State. But Georgia does have quality wins over Notre Dame, who they have ranked 16th, and Florida, who they have ranked 11th. And when you look at it, Alabama doesn't have any quality wins when you really think about it. Best win is probably Texas A&M, and they're not even ranked in the top 25 now. George Stice, I really, really like that comment that you said, and a lot of these higher class analysts have said the same thing, that you think people are sleeping on Clemson because they had one bad game against North Carolina. A North Carolina team, I should add, that despite having a losing record right now is still very, very competitive. If a couple plays go their way, North Carolina would be ranked in the top 15 right now. No doubt in my mind. They just weren't able to get the job done. Still a young team, still a new coach. It happens. But I do think people are sleeping on Clemson. They're just disregarding them. Now, yes, Clemson hasn't really played anybody. Their strength of schedule hasn't been that tough. Like Alabama, their best win probably coming against Texas A&M. But as many people have said, I think Clemson runs the table. I think they finish undefeated. I think they win the ACC. And when they're playing weaker opponents, that just gets them more and more rested for the college football playoff. When they finally have to play someone good, like if it were to happen today, Ohio State, LSU, Georgia, Alabama, who knows what's going to happen within the next few weeks. But Clemson is still, to me, a top 4 team in the country. And I agree with you, George, that people are sleeping on them, even though they're the 3rd-ranked team in the country. Tyler Clayton, good to have you, man. I appreciate that support. Always happy to do live streams, man. And we're going to be doing this every Tuesday for those of you that didn't know, haven't signed up for the newsletter or just didn't know. Every Tuesday when these rankings come out, we're doing live streams. It's going to happen. We want to discuss it with you guys. This is a pretty big deal. Emperor of Rome, speechless about Baylor. Hope they murder Oklahoma as a middle finger to the committee. And I think, honestly, you and me both, Emperor of Rome, I tell you what, you and me both, I think, are kind of hoping that when teams get disrespected like this, especially in the rankings, coaches are very quick to say that they don't pay attention. We don't care what we're ranked. We're just going to go out there and try to win the game. They're watching. And even if the coaches aren't watching, the players are watching. And they feel disrespected. And so the only way to gain that respect is to come out, show out, and annihilate your opponent the next week and prove that the committee made a mistake. Another mistake. I've got to say, I have disagreed with the College Football Playoff Committee many, many times over the past few years. You've seen it on some of our videos. You've seen it on some of our live streams. But this past 2 weeks, I think, has been the worst start to a college football playoff rankings, the worst start for a committee since it began in 2014. Absolutely unbelievable. And like I said, congratulations for getting the top 8 teams correct. That's fine. Guys still got to rank everybody else correctly. Don't half-ass it. Don't just give up. Don't just say we've done the top 4. That's what people care about. That's what the playoffs for anyways. We're done. No. You've got a job to do. If you get selected to the committee, you rank all 25 teams the way they should be ranked. And they don't seem to be doing that, don't seem to be understanding that. It's a problem when you get some people in here that have no football background whatsoever. All right, so going through the rest here. Kind of skipping down a little bit. What's going on, Tef? Good to have you. Good to have you. Hope you're doing well. Enjoyed hearing from you the other day. Thank you for that email. Hope all is going well. And thank you for joining the live stream, man. Always happy to have you. And I will agree, Vaughn Hook. I think Indiana did get a little bit robbed. They weren't ranked in last week's rankings, and not playing this week didn't help them any. Obviously, didn't hurt them any, but didn't help them any. I think if they had played this past week and beaten an opponent, they would have been ranked. But sitting at 7-2, I did have them in at 24, and I had them at 24 because I believe a team like Kansas State or Iowa should have dropped out of the rankings. I get for the Wildcats and the Hawkeyes, both of those losses were narrow. Iowa losing by 2 to Wisconsin, and Kansas State losing by 3 at the buzzer to Texas. But I just I don't think both of them should have remained in the rankings. And if you ask me, I think that Iowa should have dropped further than Kansas State. Both teams have 3 losses right now. Kansas State, I think playing a little bit more competitive ball than the Hawkeyes are. Would love to see that in a bowl game, actually. That'd be a fantastic bowl game. Chris Kleiman and Kansas State from the Big 12 going up against Iowa in the Big 10. That would be a fun bowl game. And maybe the football gods will gift us with that. Ryan McCormick, good to have you. Justice for Baylor, as you're saying. I think we all want justice for Baylor. Very, very frustrating the way things are shaping up right now. And Johnny Bays, yes, I apologize. I did a little word slip, but I do get a little bit heated because I think the playoff committee simply does not know what they're doing, and I fear for the one-loss teams. I fear for the one-loss teams because I don't think this committee, from what I've seen, I don't think they're prepared for the chaos that's about to ensue over the next 4 weeks. We have 3 weeks remaining in the regular season. Then we have the conference championship weekend, and something always crazy happens on conference championship weekend. And I don't think this committee especially, is prepared for something to decide, all right, we know an undefeated LSU is going to get in. We know an undefeated Ohio State is going to get in. We know an undefeated Clemson is going to get in. But who gets that last spot? Assuming LSU were to beat Georgia in the SEC title game, do you put in a one-loss Alabama who didn't win their conference? Do you put in a one-loss Oregon or Utah who won the Pac-12? Do you put in, a one-loss Oklahoma who wins the Big 12? Or a one-loss Baylor? Apparently not. I mean, hell, Baylor's number 13 in the country and they're undefeated. So heaven forbid Baylor lose a game. They'd probably be out of the top 25 by that point. But I don't think this committee is prepared for something like that. I don't think they have the mental – I don't think they're in a right mental state and have the best football knowledge to make a wise decision on who to put in for that 4th spot, because we know it's coming. There haven't been many years since 2014 that we've had it very simply. We know who the top 4 are going to be, and there's going to be no controversy. We haven't had many of those. There's always someone battling for that final spot in these rankings, and I don't think this committee is prepared for that, and I don't think they're going to know how to handle it, and I think they will fail. They failed the past 2 weeks, and I think they will fail in the end. And that is simply just embarrassing. Absolutely embarrassing. Syracuse and Buffalo Sports. Is Syracuse the most disappointing team in the Power 5? I wouldn't say most disappointing, but they are by far one of them. After coming off a 10-win season, Tommy DeVito seemed like the man. And I don't think they – I think last year was a fluke. I hate to say it. I think the schedule lined up well. Syracuse got some good quality wins. Eric Dungy was phenomenal, but I'm guessing that they just think it was a fluke. And I hate that for Syracuse. I do, but they've been by far one of the most disappointing teams of the season. I don't know if I'd say they're the worst or the most disappointing in the Power 5, but they are up there. Vaughn Hook, is SMU ranked? I'm looking here. Actually, you know what? They're not ranked. I'm taking a look. I don't think they are ranked. And that's something that actually just caught my eye. Actually, I missed that. So, very good point. I'm glad you pointed that out. They're not ranked. I disagreed with the committee last week, putting SMU down at 25. Unless I'm missing something here. They're not ranked in this top 25. Appalachian State is in at 25, Kansas State 24, Navy 23rd, Oklahoma State 22. SMU did not drop any higher than that because they were 25th and allowed East Carolina to drop 51 points on them in an 8-point victory at home. So I think SMU did deserve to drop. I had SMU move up a slight few in our rankings. Had I had them ranked lower in my initial rankings, I probably would have dropped them out. A little bit of disrespect. Apparently, the committee doesn't like to respect quality opponents. Apparently, don't like to respect quality opponents out of the or quality teams out of the state of Texas, with SMU and Baylor. But no, they are not ranked. Trisha, yes, the top 4 is out. That is why we're here. That is why we are having a live stream. The top 4 is in fact out, and that is LSU at 1, Ohio State at 2, Clemson at 3, and Georgia at 4. Josh Pruitt, Canada. I think you need to go to ESPN the Ocho to see the Canada rankings. You might want to go check those out. I'm sure they have something over there for you. Michael Buck, yes, App State. App State ranked 25th, right where we had them. They deserve it. They absolutely deserve it, defeating South Carolina, a team out of the SEC. That win even looking better for Appalachian State because South Carolina beat the number 4 team in the country now in Georgia. So not making a New Year's Six bowl. They don't have enough to jump Cincinnati, Memphis, even Navy for that matter. But, I mean, they're still in the running. If you're ranked, you have a chance, but I highly doubt it. Mr. Cannoli, the committee is biased. You can say that again, and I will agree with you every single time. They are biased, and they do not know what they're talking about. And quite frankly, I hate to say that because I am a student here at Arkansas State University, and my AD is on the committee. But I don't know what kind of role he has. I don't know what kind of stuff he is saying in that room. But they obviously don't know what the hell they're talking about. They obviously don't know what the heck they're doing. I'm extremely, extremely angry once again. I was disappointed with the first set of rankings. I was not pleased with them, but I figured, all right, it's the first one. We're just kind of getting a foundation laid out. We will fix it as we go on. And this set of rankings in week 2 may be worse than the first week. And that is a problem. And that is a major problem. It obviously shows that the committee is not improving. And that's why I do fear for some of these teams when Selection Sunday comes around in December. George Stites, they need to transform the system into a 16-team playoff in the next 5 years. Would be so much fun to watch. I am a huge proponent for expanding the playoffs. I'm a huge advocate for that. I believe it needs to happen. I don't think 16. This is a discussion that will rage on for years and years and years until someone does something about it. And of course, they probably won't. But I think the committee needs to expand the playoff needs to expand to at least 8. I think they need to expand to 8 teams. I think that would really cut down because every year you're going to have someone that's left out. The past couple of years it's been, the guys that are 5 and 6 just barely missed the cut. You expand to 8. 9 and 10 just missed it. 16, 17, 18 just missed it. You got to draw the line somewhere. And I think 8 is the perfect spot. 8 is a better playoff system, I think, than what we have now. I mean, the FCS is still college football Division I. And what do they have? 24 teams? A 24-team playoff? And that is perfect. Perfect. The NFL does 6 from each conference. The NBA does 8 from each conference. Don't see why college football at this high in the FBS level finds it so difficult. It blows my mind. Emperor Roma, I may have missed your comment. I'm not sure. I'm going to scroll back up. If it's you addressing your top 4, you'd have LSU, Ohio State, Minnesota, and Alabama. And that is a big one. That's a very interesting top 4. I like it. You talk about, or top 5, excuse me. Your top 5 would be LSU, Ohio State, Minnesota, Baylor, and Alabama. Could you imagine that? Imagine that playoff. LSU versus Baylor in the semifinal, and then Ohio State, Minnesota, which more than likely wouldn't happen because they would have to meet in the Big Ten championship. But right now, there's something to be said. I had a comment the other day, guys. I had a comment that said, Baylor and Minnesota, from my rankings, need to be ranked higher because they were undefeated. And while I do understand that, there is something to be said for quality wins. You can be undefeated and not have any quality wins. Just go look at UCF the past few years. UCF didn't deserve to be ranked number 5, number 4 in the country at the time. And I know we're talking, it's a difference between a group of 5 team here and a Power 5 team like Minnesota and Baylor, but strength of schedule and quality wins matter. So Baylor, like I said, has 2 quality wins over Kansas State and Oklahoma State. They're not nearly as good, though, as Minnesota's win over Penn State. Minnesota's win over Penn State is, to me, equal to Baylor's two big wins over Kansas State and Oklahoma State. And that just shows, how big a deal that win last week was for the Golden Gophers. So, you can be undefeated and not be ranked in the top 5, in the top 6. But Baylor deserves to be ranked in the top 10. Just flat out getting disrespected. Flat out getting disrespected because they dropped. You keep them at 12th, I'm still upset, but okay, I get it. It wasn't an impressive victory over TCU, but you drop them a spot, I got a problem with that. So a great top 5. I mean, it would be very interesting to see Minnesota and Baylor in the top 4. And Minnesota, I think, is quickly moving in that direction. Especially that we know that if they keep winning, Oregon or Utah is going to lose in the Pac-12 championship. Georgia or LSU will lose in the SEC championship. And then you have Minnesota's date against Ohio State, which is looking more like Minnesota-Ohio State. Ohio State still has to get past Penn State, but if they face off against each other, Minnesota wins that game, they're in. And my goodness, I don't think anybody saw P.J. Fleck rowing the boat all the way to the college football playoff. That's unbelievable. Yeah, so Chris Lucas, if you're just now joining us or haven't been here for too long, just rewind about, 20 minutes and you'll get my take on Minnesota and Baylor. Baylor's ranking unfair, Minnesota fair. And that was the question I was posing before the stream even started. I said I wanted to see where Baylor was ranked. I wanted to see where Minnesota jumped after their win over Penn State. I wanted to see where Alabama fell. Those were the biggest questions for me. I want to see the way this top 10 was structured. I think Baylor got snubbed for the second week in a row, but I think Minnesota's spot, jumping 9 spots all the way to number 8, you couldn't ask for anything better if you're a Golden Gophers fan. Very well deserved. Big game against Iowa here coming up this Saturday. Obviously a game against Iowa that, in my opinion, should not be a ranked versus ranked matchup, but the AP poll did it. The playoff committee did it. They're biased. They love the eye test. They love the appeal that a ranked versus ranked matchup has. And seeing Minnesota take on a ranked Iowa team, oh my goodness, that is just everything in the world. Heaven forbid it would be Minnesota versus an unranked Iowa team. No, we have to make sure it's ranked versus ranked. And the AP poll is guilty of that. The playoff committee is guilty of that. Doesn't mean it's right. Ryan McCormick, man, I appreciate that. I wish I was on the committee as well too. I sure wish I was on there. I think I don't know how much weight one person has, but I think an opinion can sway a room. I think someone offering their thoughts and their analysis and their opinions can maybe sway someone into another direction. It's kind of like a chain reaction. There are 13 members in there, so that way if they have a tie, someone's going to break it. So, God, man, I wish I was. Maybe I will be one day because I think I could fix a lot of these issues. And, Tef, you're exactly right. Lots and lots of politics behind closed doors. Plenty. Back in 2014 when these guys began, there was supposed to be like the white jacket that they would put on to relieve themselves of their biases. Because we have a lot of athletic directors on the committee. And so they obviously have biasness and loyalties towards their programs, and rightfully so. So, but when they walk into that room, they were supposed to let go of that. They're supposed to let go and say, for example, let's say I'm the athletic director at Alabama. I am not supposed to be extremely biased towards my school. If I'm the athletic director at Oklahoma, I'm not supposed to be biased towards my school. I'm supposed to do what is right for the state of college football. And I do think there's some politics that go on behind closed doors because that is certainly easier said than done. I don't think that's exactly how it works anymore. I think many years ago, the playoff committee was doing better. Past couple of years, they have struggled. Emperor Rome, I like your thing. I'm still going down all the comments, guys. I'm gonna try to address every one that I can. Emperor of Rome saying that his rankings aren't based on matchups; it's based solely on who I think are the best teams. And I agree with that. That's the way the committee has to do it. They don't say best 4 teams based on matchups. It's who do we think are the top 4 teams, best 4 teams, and that's how it should be. But I do look at, and you're right. I guess you're saying, I put Baylor ahead of Alabama, not because you think Baylor would beat Alabama, but because Baylor's playing better than Alabama right now. Maybe. But then there comes down to the head-to-head conversation, I mean, you play 10 times Minnesota and Penn State. How many times has Minnesota beat Penn State? You play 10 times Florida and Auburn. How many times has Florida beat Auburn? The committee ranks them ahead of their head-to-head matchups, and I believe that's correct. I believe they should do that. But when part of me does have a little bit of the matchup thought in it, looking at it. I don't think Baylor could beat Alabama right now. I don't think that Oregon could beat Alabama. I don't think Utah could beat Alabama. I don't think Minnesota could beat Alabama. And that's why I like Alabama being ahead of all those people. So that does play a role in some of my rankings as well, looking at them if they were to play each other. Because if they play each other and I think that team wins, that means they're better than that team. Therefore, they're going to be ranked ahead of that team. Going through the rest of these comments here as well. B123, best bet time. Dude, I want you to sign up for the picks. I can promise you you're not going to be disappointed. I promise you're not going to be disappointed. I don't want to give out any too much information here because I got some really good ones this week that are coming out tomorrow. We already did all of our research today. We've got them all lined up, ready to release around noon tomorrow for those of you that are, in fact, signed up for the expert picks, and I feel good about them. So all of them, to me, are best bets. So take a look at them, man. Take a look. I see your Florida logo there, so go check it out. Go check it out. DM, really good to see you. Glad you were able to join us tonight, man. I'm very excited to have you. Good hearing from you, always through the emails, and good to see you here. Does your AD at Arkansas State know about myself and my channel? If he doesn't, he should. As a matter of fact, DM, he does. Terry Mahajer is the athletic director here at Arkansas State. He does know about the channel, and I'm doing everything in my power, although if he has ever watched us and is watching this live stream or has watched this live stream, he might not want to, but I'm doing everything in my power to land an interview with that man to discuss for you guys these playoff rankings, to get an inside source of what's going on in that room. Why are teams ranked the way they are? Can you elaborate to me what is important to this committee? Obviously, head-to-head is still important, but is it strength of schedule? Is it quality wins? Is it quality losses? Are you looking ahead to future matchups? What is important to this committee? Because every committee is different. Every person is different. They all kind of have a different set of morals and a different set of guidelines that they're going to go through when they're ranking these teams. So I would love to hear from him, and I'm doing everything in my power to arrange that. So no guarantees, but he knows about it. We've talked about it. He's just obviously a busy man, and I completely understand that. So hopefully we'll be moving to that point. But DM, like I said, super happy to have you, man. Hope you're doing well. Always good to see you here. All right, what else we have? I don't know. Emperor of Rome, you're saying Minnesota could definitely beat Alabama. I don't know if I'd go that far. Great win over Penn State. Great aerial attack. Alabama's secondary got torched. So you look at it like that. If Tanner Morgan can play, but I just don't know. You put him on a neutral site. I don't know. Tua Tagovailoa is better than Sean Clifford. Sean Clifford threw 3 interceptions against that Minnesota defense, which is very, very good. But Clifford is no Tagovailoa. We know that. Alabama's receivers are a different breed than Penn State's receivers. KJ Hamler is phenomenal. Pat Fryermuth is phenomenal at tight end. But you put Alabama, I'd love to see Alabama's wide receivers go up against that Minnesota defense. I think it might be close, but I would take Alabama over Minnesota right now. And that's just me. That's why Alabama, for me, was ranked ahead of Minnesota. And I think if they met up, that's exactly what would happen. Looking through the rest of these comments here, Tef, I like your statement here. Kind of, Auburn will force Georgia. Which keep in mind, guys, we have a lot of game of the week analysis coming out. One of those will be Auburn, Georgia. We just did our prediction on that game today. That's already out. You might want to go check out that video. But Auburn will force Georgia to win through the air attack. Auburn wins. Switching gears from the playoff rankings, it's going to be a great game. Good rivalry between the Tigers and the Bulldogs. Two teams that are very run heavy, very run dominant. But look at Georgia's defense, guys. That was my tipping point when I picked the Bulldogs in my prediction. Georgia's defense has yet to allow a rushing touchdown this season. Not one. Not against any team they faced. They have not allowed one rushing touchdown. I think Georgia's defense bottles up Auburn and their run game, which in Auburn's defensive line might do the same thing to DeAndre Swift. I don't want to take anything away from that. But so when you put it down on paper, though, you look, and even on the field, who's the better quarterback? Who has the quarterback edge? Is it Georgia and Jake Fromm, or is it Auburn and Bo Nix? And 100% it's Jake Fromm and Georgia. Jake Fromm is 100% a better quarterback and has played better at quarterback than Bo Nix has. He has not impressed me in games that matter. Oregon, LSU, Florida. Bo Nix has struggled against good, solid defenses, and Georgia has one of the best defenses in the entire country. I don't have faith in Bo Nix to win a football game for me solely through the air. But with that game being at Jordan-Hare Stadium, where Auburn has won 3 of the past 5, I'm not counting Auburn out. I am expecting a good, close game between these two. But I think Georgia has a little bit more to play for in this one. They win, they clinch the East. They're number 4. They're still in the playoff hunt, obviously. I just don't think Bo Nix can do it solely by himself. If it comes down to throwing the ball, Georgia wins, in my opinion. Yeah, Tef, all Georgia's receivers may be new, and while Auburn's may not, I mean, they've developed enough chemistry, haven't they, though? I mean, you look at what Georgia's performances against Notre Dame. You look at Georgia's performance. My biggest thing with the receivers being new, look at their performance against Florida. That was a game where DeAndre Swift really didn't get going at all. But Jake Fromm bounced back off a bye week and annihilated Florida's secondary, one of which many consider to be the best or one of the best in the entire country. And Jake Fromm and those new receivers dominated them. Florida's secondary is better than Auburn's secondary. That's plain and simple. That's facts. And I just don't see, even though they're new, they've developed good chemistry. Fromm's one of the most consistent and efficient quarterbacks in the country. I just don't see Georgia struggling too much in the passing game. The only way they do struggle there is if their offensive line stays battered down by that Auburn defensive line and they're able to create pressure on Jake Fromm. That's when you have an issue, and that's where miscommunications and the pressure, maybe some bad decision-making from Jake Fromm will result in an Auburn victory. Michael Buck, I should wear a pink tie. If you want to get me a pink tie, I'll gladly wear a pink tie. Should have been wearing it in October, though. I definitely should have been wearing it then. But maybe if I can find one, or you can send one my way, then I'll definitely do it. But Michael, always good to have you here as well. All right, looking through the rest of these comments. Once again, guys, thank you all so much for joining. We had over 100 viewers at one point. We're at 46. We're still going strong. Always happy to take your questions, your comments, the discussion. I think we've kind of slowly moved away from the playoff discussion, from the ranking discussion, and I'm going to continue to take your questions and comments here. But once again, just before we finally move away from that and put that to bed, because we talked about that for about the first 30 minutes, I agree with the top 8. That's exactly my top 8. So I don't have any discrepancies there. How can I have a disagreement with something that I put down myself before these rankings even came out? I can't. So I like the top 8. I had Penn State at 10. They're at 9. I had Oklahoma at 10, or I had Oklahoma at 12. They're at 10. Okay. I have Florida at 11. Fine. Biggest takeaway from today, Baylor getting snubbed once again. SMU dropping out of the top 25. Iowa staying in the top 25, actually remaining in the top 20. If I'm not mistaken, Iowa was 19th last week, and they only dropped 1 spot after the loss to Wisconsin. I get it was only by 2 points, but should have been by more than that. So that's another big takeaway there. Keep an eye on Cincinnati and Memphis, now at number 17 and 18, where we had them coming into today. We ranked them at 17th and 18th. Obviously, with those two teams having to face off soon out of the American Athletic, that is going to be a huge one determining who goes to a New Year's Six bowl game. And I think that's about it, guys. I think you can draw the line from these college football playoff rankings, week 2 of these rankings. You can draw the line at 13 for teams that are college football playoff contenders. It's always fun to kind of determine where you can stop talking about contenders. Wisconsin is out of the picture for me. Baylor is still in it. So you draw the line at Baylor. Everyone up is still in the hunt for the playoff. And that does include Auburn and Florida. Auburn still has a date against Georgia, still has a date against Alabama. If they win both of those, you can make a case for an Auburn team that could get into the college football playoff as a 2-loss team despite not even playing in their conference championship, because that, of course, would go to LSU. And the fact that Auburn only lost to Florida and LSU helps their cause because those are quality losses. Florida is still in the hunt. They're still in the hunt to win the East. If Georgia goes down to Auburn this Saturday and Florida keeps winning, then they are very much still alive to win that Eastern Division. And if Florida wins out, including a win over LSU, more than likely in the SEC title game, then you can make a case for Florida to get in there. So draw the line at Baylor, draw the line at 13. There are 13 teams in the hunt for the college football playoff right now. Some chances bigger than others, but all of them very much still alive as we continue to work our way through November. So I've put that to bed. Horrible, horrible rankings today. Horrible, horrible job from the committee today. I can only pray they will get it better next week when we meet again, when we do this live stream again. We talk about these rankings again. But it was a bad day, I think, for college football, and a bad day for the committee, who, once again, I don't think has quite figured out what they believe in, what is important to them, what their format is going to be in ranking these top 25 teams. Having said that, I want to take a few more questions before we start to wrap things up. So I'm going to go scroll back up here. James Scott, if I wear a pink tie, make sure I have a white jacket. Now, that would be something. I might have to invest in that. I might have to invest in a white suit jacket with my pink tie. That would look pretty snazzy. Mina, do I think Oklahoma can beat Baylor twice? Absolutely. I have Oklahoma defeating Baylor this week. And if they were to meet again in the Big 12 championship game, I do think Oklahoma can do it again. I'm not saying they will, but I think they can. Jackson Paz, who do I think is going to win next week, SMU or Navy? I can't remember if that game is at SMU or Navy, but personally, home field advantage for me is going to be the deciding factor in that. I think SMU's defense, actually, I take that back. I like Navy. Forget home field advantage. I like Navy for right now. SMU's defense has been horrendous. And I don't know if they're going to be able to stop that Navy triple option. I expect Navy to throw the ball just a little bit to keep the Mustangs, kind of catch them off guard a little bit in a game like that. So I simply do not like that SMU defense right now. They allow 51 points to East Carolina. Major reason why they dropped out of these top 25. Justin Farmer, who do I think Florida State's new hire will be since they fired Willie Taggart? That beats me. The coaching carousel is always something fun to keep an eye on, something that kind of gets us through through bowl season. So from the end of November through probably the end of January, you're seeing coaches getting hired left and right, coaches getting fired left and right. Florida State is such a big-time program and a program with such high expectations that, to me, they have to land a pretty big name to please their fan base and to truly make them relevant again, both in the ACC and nationally. There are rumors that it could be Mark Stoops coming over from Kentucky. I don't know if he would do that, but he has built something very strongly at Kentucky. I think he would do well with the Seminoles. There's rumors it could be Mike Norvell from Memphis. There's rumors that could even be Deion Sanders, kind of implementing what kind of Herm Edwards is doing over at Arizona State. While Deion Sanders knows the game of football and knows it well and is a phenomenal football player, or was, he would kind of run it as a CEO. Would kind of run it as a CEO-type coach, where he would allow most of his coordinators to run the team, to handle it, while he would be able to do a great job of recruiting and managing the team when it comes to obviously style and discipline and management. So Florida State would be crazy to not even look at Deion Sanders. I don't know if it would be the best fit for what they're looking for to become playoff contenders, to become title contenders, but it would be an interesting experiment. The problem is for Florida State, with the disappointing season they've had the past few years, they're not in a place right now to experiment. They don't have time to test somebody out and say, oh, God, let's hope this works. They've got to get someone in there that they know is going to be legit, someone they know is going to be able to come in and turn that program around like that. I don't know if some of those guys I mentioned would be able to do it. So they've got a plan. At least I hope. Willie Taggart never had a plan, so I hope the administration does. And they'll get someone good. I have faith in that. Eli Arbeza, good to have you here. As always happy to hear from you and always have very interesting takes on things. So I'm always interested in hearing what you have to say. Truly. I don't put Minnesota up at number 4 because I once again don't feel like, even though they're undefeated and that win over Penn State was phenomenal, I don't feel that they could beat Alabama or Oregon, maybe beat Oregon, but I don't feel that one great win deserves to propel you from 17th to 4th. That's 13 spots we're talking about. And I just don't think one good win, as good as it was, and obviously showing that Minnesota is a legit contender across the board, I don't think one good win justifies you jumping from 17th all the way to 4 and jumping a team like Georgia or Alabama, Oregon, Utah, etc. So I just don't feel that for right now. I do agree with you that the eye test can be very subjective. And you and I do have very, very big disagreements in our rankings. I enjoyed looking at your rankings. Memphis all the way up at number 10. Obviously, Minnesota up there in the top 4. That's the beauty of college football. Being college football, people can disagree. People have different opinions. People have different rankings, thoughts, styles. And that's what makes it great. Football across the board wouldn't be fun if everybody agreed. That wouldn't be fun at all. Take a look here. DM, the nation's worst team in Rutgers, plays the nation's best team in Ohio State this Saturday. 50-plus point spread. Please comment. Well, man, DM, you're right. I don't even know if Rutgers is the worst team anymore. That liberty could go to Arkansas out of the SEC, but when you're playing Ohio State, a team that just dropped 73 on Maryland, as I've talked to many people and other analysts, other guys out there, we have all come to the agreement that Ohio State could name the score that they want in this game, and it'll happen. They could say, we want this game to be 73-0, and it'll be 73-0. They could say we want it to be just 7-0, and they can take their foot off the gas and make sure it happens. Ohio State, we know, is going to annihilate Rutgers. I think everybody knows it's coming, despite it being in New Jersey. Ohio State will win this game. They will win it handily, and I think they will win it by over 50 points. They annihilated Maryland last week. Everybody has annihilated Rutgers this season for the most part, and I don't see Ohio State being any different. I actually see this being one of the worst losses that Rutgers will receive this season. I hate that. I hate that for you. I hate that for Comic Dude. I hate that for everybody at Rutgers, but it's just a fact of the matter. It's going to happen. But the only bright spot is, as you and I have discussed, the potential of Greg Schiano returning to coach Rutgers will make everything better. While this has been an abysmal season, while this has been an abysmal 4 years for Rutgers under the Chris Ash era, having a good sense, and if it does happen, this makes it even better, that Greg Schiano might come back to coach the Scarlet Knights is going to make the anticipation and the excitement and the passion from a fan base that has really been non-existent because of how bad this team has been. It's going to make everything so much better, and all those things increase so much if Schiano does indeed come back. 2020 will be a huge, monumental season for Rutgers if they can indeed land that hire. Tef, how good is Ohio State really? Better than LSU? I like LSU's defense a tad bit better than Ohio State. That's a great question. Great question. Back in the preseason, Tef, I thought LSU was going to have one of the best secondaries in the country. They had so much talent, and they still do. But I've watched LSU all season long, and their secondary has not lived up to the hype. They got torched by Alabama and Tua Tagovailoa. And I get that's Alabama. I get you're facing maybe the best quarterback in the country. As many teams would get torched by Tua. But they struggled against Florida as well. They let 38 points up to Vanderbilt. And a lot of those did not come in garbage time. So I don't really like LSU's defense better than Ohio State, although I will say that Ohio State has not been nearly as tested as LSU has this season. I mean, LSU, as we mentioned, they beat Texas on the road, who at the time was a top 10 team, and Austin, a very difficult place to play. They've done that. They've beat Florida. They've beat Auburn. And they just went on the road and beat Alabama. I think LSU is the top team in the country as I rank them, as the committee ranked them. But I think Ohio State owns an edge defensively. I think Ohio State could slow down Joe Burrow in that passing attack just a little bit. Not fully. They're still going to put up some points. But I do think Ohio State slows them down a little bit. I think that would be a phenomenal national championship matchup. LSU's at 1 and Ohio State at 2 or vice versa, as long as they don't meet in the semifinals, which I highly doubt they will, seeing LSU and Ohio State in a national championship game, what I think is the most complete team in the country in Ohio State going up against what I think is maybe the best offense in the entire country, going at it for the national title, that would just be a dream come true and a phenomenal way to end the 150th season of college football. Emperor of Rome, back with the trivia. The worst team in college football right now, not Rutgers, not Arkansas, not Northwestern, the Akron Zips. They are 0-9 and are being outscored. Good Lord, 92-321. I didn't know it was that bad. Holy cow. I pay a little bit of attention to the midweek Maction. I watch it when it's on. I enjoy it. But, wow, I have not noticed that Akron's getting outscored 92-321 this season. That's a horrible mark for an Akron team that just a few years ago was going bowling. It was actually relevant in the MAC. Hate to see it. Great trivia. Looking through the rest of these comments here. Tef, you think Ohio State will score on every possession against Rutgers? I firmly agree with that. And Rutgers is more than likely not even going to have to face Chase Young. So imagine if Chase Young was playing in that game. Might make things a little bit worse for Rutgers. So I believe, like I said, that Ohio State can choose what they want that score to be, and they'll make it happen. They're going to run away with it. And B123, I'll tell you what, if you want a free pick, I'm picking Ohio State against the spread and Rutgers. Every team I've picked against the spread against Rutgers has covered, and I would expect the same out of Ohio State, arguably the best team in the nation. All right, going through the final comments here. Once again, thank you all for joining us. 43 people on right now, over 100 earlier today. Make sure to hit that like button. Final couple questions here. Eli, once again, you are a major proponent and advocate for the Group of Five, and I love it. And they deserve it. Group of Five people deserve the credit and deserve recognition. That's what I'm looking for. Louisiana Tech, you're saying, should be in the top 25. Iowa State, Oklahoma State don't deserve to be ranked. Iowa State's not ranked. Kansas State, I'm sure, is what you were thinking of. Kansas State would have dropped out had they been ranked any lower than 16th. Losing on the road to Texas, who's not a bad team, didn't deserve them to drop out. I think Iowa should be out. Louisiana Tech's looking really good, but a huge game coming up against Marshall. I do pay attention to the Group of Five. Thank you very much. Huge game against Marshall coming up in the Conference USA. And if they win that, I would expect them to be in the top 25 by next week. Along with Indiana, if the Hoosiers can somehow beat Penn State in Happy Valley. Also, Eli, very interesting question. Would I wear a cup if I played football? Yeah, I guess. I did. I used to play football, Eli, and you had one of those like girdle type things. It was one of those things that had it built in, had the pads on your thigh, on your knee, the cup. Don't know where that came from. Don't know what the context was, but yeah, I would. And you got to protect it. You got to protect got to protect your down low, man. Got to protect it down there. So yes, absolutely. And Johnny Bays, I am watching the College Football 150 shows. I'm loving every second of it. With such a major milestone for this game that we all love and we talk about all the time, it's awesome to watch the College Football 150 highlighting the best players, the best coaches, the best games, the best moments, the traditions, the mascot. I mean, you name it, they're doing it. And whoever came up with the idea deserves a huge pay raise because this is absolutely phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. And I love every second of it. Josh Pruitt, free picks, bad business. We only do it on occasion. There's a thing called a teaser. You have to give people a teaser sometimes. Only on occasion, though. But we are very grateful for everybody that supported the channel. You, of course, being one of them as well. Emperor of Rome, Akron's currently losing by 28 to Eastern Michigan, 28-0. So I don't even know what that makes it. 92 to 340 now. They're getting outscored. I mean, golly, that's terrible. Absolutely terrible. Might go 0-12 this season. That's very, very difficult to do. Very, very difficult to do. I didn't see the comment from Robert Hobbs, but apparently Tef thought it was interesting. Robert might have to talk to you about that later on. DM Rutgers Akron would be very interesting if you know what I mean. I think we all know what you mean by that. Now that would be something. That would be a heck of a matchup there. All right, take a look. Guys, I think we're going to start wrapping things up. We've got 34 on the stream, and I appreciate that. Well over an hour, and that's usually what we try to keep it at with these live streams that we cover with the college football playoff rankings, something that we will do every single Tuesday, as many of you know. And so once again, we're going to do it next Tuesday. We're going to try to have a call-in show here at some point. As I'm sure you can imagine, this schedule here is extremely swamped. We're extremely busy, but we try to do as much as possible here for you guys. Tons of content. We're focusing more on the videos than we are on the live streams. We do want to get this out because I enjoy getting these initial reactions from me and reactions from you guys as we see the College Football Playoff Committee continue to do a horrible job at the most important job they have right now. So, guys, thank you for watching here. Every single one of you, from the 100+ that have watched it, from the 100+ that will watch it after this, from the 32 that are on right now. Emperor of Rome, thank you for joining us. Robert Hobbs, B123 DM, thank you so much for your support. Really appreciate that. Go Kansas State, go Rutgers, go North Dakota State. Obviously a huge FCS advocate as well. Michael Buck, Johnny Bays, Vaughn Hook. Michael Buck, thank you. We'll miss you as well. Zach Albright. Anybody else I'm missing? Comic Dude, Tef. Everybody else, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate all of your support. Make sure to hit that like button on your way out. Stay tuned next week for our another College Football Playoff Rankings live stream. Stay tuned tomorrow for our Game of the Week analysis. Enjoy the rest of your week. Stay safe. Enjoy the rest of the content. Enjoy your College Football Saturday. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next time on The Gridiron Expert.